My book club and I decided to read it first. Best decision we made. Let me repeat it. Best decision we made was to read this first. Howdy, my loves. We are back to do our August reading wrap-ups. I know this is a little late, but I did want to talk about the books I read in August because I started some really good series, I read some really good romances, and overall just had a really good reading month. First book we are going to discuss is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I have read Elsie Silver before, and I was really excited to get this book because Elsie Silver wrote the Chestnut Spring series. Was it a top tier series for me? No. But it was very cute and reliably in that 4-star range. So I really did want to read this because so many people said that this was like a 5-star read for them. It was amazing. I personally thought that it was really cute. It wasn't a 5-star read. I rated it a 4. Premise is about a guy, his name is Ford, who just found out that he is the biological father to a little girl. Her family had run into a bit of an issue where the dad had just died and the mom is falling into a bout of depression. So with no one else to turn to, she locates her biological father. He was a sperm donor. And so she asks him for help. He is a billionaire, so he doesn't really think twice, which was very nice of him. Takes her in, checks the mom into a mental health facility, and decides to be a part of this little girl's life. At the same time, his best friend's little sister Rosie is back in town after quitting her job due to a really bad incident. She does have a relationship, but it's kind of in limbo right now. So the two of them kind of interconnect, and he hires her to work for him because he wants to start up a record label with nothing but $1 billion to spend. He just wants to be able to pursue the things that he's very passionate about. I thought that this book did really well with not the typical single dad, but kind of that single dad trope, small town romance. There was a lot of very cute scenes, particularly surrounding eating at the lake, talking about music. Also the fact that Rosie and Ford both really bonded with Cora, which is his daughter. Sometimes when people write kids, and I know this isn't really a little girl, but she's still a child, they don't write it the best. And so I was really surprised and very happy to see that their relationship enhanced the relationship between Rosie and Ford. So I think that this was a very, very sweet read. Again, I give it 4 stars. Next book I read in August was Leather and Lark. This is number 2 in the Ruinous Love series by Bryn Weaver. Thought this one was good, just not as good as the first one. It's more so a dark romantic comedy. Look up the trigger warnings. Lots of murder, lots of serial killing. It's very gory. But book 1, Butcher and Blackbird, was really good. And it was so funny, outrageous, the romance was cute, oddly comical to be about people who kill for sport. This book, it was okay. I gave it 3.25 stars. The main couple in book 1, the guy has a brother, Lakeland. The girl has a best friend, Lark. So that's the main couple in this book too. It still is about killers. Okay, so the main couple, they're both killers, they're morally flexible, but it is a marriage of convenience. Lakeland is a contract killer and he doesn't really like the guy that he's working for. He pissed him off by screwing with a very major client of his. Turns out that that was Lark. They didn't really recognize each other because she had a lot of makeup on. She was dressed as Harley Quinn and I think had her hair up and she was a mess. At the same time, people in Lark's family, her family is immensely rich. People are killing people in her inner circle. Her parents actually begin to suspect that it is Lakeland. Maybe it's also his brother Rowan. So in order to save her best friend's relationship, she proposes, let's get married. It'll save you, it'll save your brother, and it'll save my best friend. I think that is a very flimsy excuse. I don't really buy into that reason for marriage of convenience. It doesn't logically make sense. And also, I won't spoil it for you guys, but the person that's doing the killing, it just doesn't make logical sense why they're going after Lark's family. It doesn't make sense. And I think there was just a lot of logical plot holes that I just didn't love about this book. There were still some bright moments. It was still comical. It was still lighthearted despite what's going on at the root of it. But it was only worth 3.25 to me. The next book I read was a really popular one, and that is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I heard nothing but glowing reviews of this book. This is about Peyton Gray, and she is a ordinary. And in this kingdom, the king is trying to root out all the people who don't have magical abilities because he believes, and he's trying to get everyone else to believe, that they cause disease that kills people with powers. And so it's just safer for all the ordinary people to be exiled or killed if they don't comply. So So Peyton, her father was really smart and he knew that she didn't have any powers, and so he taught her how to pretend to have powers. So she claims that she's a psychic, but really her father just taught her from a young age to be incredibly observant. And she actually fools a lot of people with this ability. She just knows how to gather information really quickly. However, that kind of bites her in the ass because one day she, in the slums where she lives, she ends up accidentally saving the prince of this kingdom. And because of that, people in the slums vote her to do the trials, which is something that is held by the kingdom. And it's basically a showcase for people who have those abilities to prove, you know, who's the best. Now she is taken to the kingdom and is forced to compete in this trial. Personally, I thought this book was entertaining. I rated it 4 stars. However, I don't think it's as great as everyone has been making it seem. I just think that it was way too similar to the Hunger Games in some points. Like, it's just the Hunger Games but with powers. Suzanne Collins really did that, trademarked it, made a huge success off of it. Like, you can't really repeat and reuse and recycle that. Additionally, I also thought that a lot of the rules with these powers kept being bent or revised in very convenient ways for the writing. For example, the main guy Kai, who is downright scrumptious, his power is to be able to sense powers off of other people. So then you think, okay, well, this girl is cooked because he can obviously look at her and be like, you don't got shit. Okay, but no, he reasons, he's like, okay, well, she's not using her powers right now, right this second, which is why I can't feel anything. There are other people who are using their abilities who aren't using their abilities that he can feel their power anyway. So I'm like, why didn't you do that to her? What would have made more sense to me was because she saved him. What would have made more sense to me was if he knew she didn't have powers and didn't say anything because he felt indebted to her. So there were just a lot of examples like that where the rules weren't consistent, and I get it, it's a fantasy, right? But I do like consistency in the world building. But was it entertaining? Yes. For a fantasy romance, pretty entertaining. Bought book 2 as well, so I will be continuing with the series. It just wasn't as mind-blowing as everyone made it out to be. The next book that I read absolutely rocked my world. Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. Finally found my first 5-star read of 2024. It was August. Ladies and gentlemen, it was August, 8 months deep into the year. I did not think I was gonna find a 5-star read like at all. I was losing hope. Thanks to everyone on Book Talk recommending this book, I finally picked this up and I'm so glad that I did. This is a romance about high schoolers. However, there are very dark topics included in here. So I would look at the trigger warnings before you go ahead and read this. I assumed, because it was about Tom in college, I was like, oh, it's a college romance. No. It's set in Ireland and it's about these rugby players, okay, but Tom in college is a high school. So we have Shannon, who's 16 years old. Johnny Kavanagh is the best book boyfriend, like one of the best book boyfriends I've ever read. And he is 17 years old. He's a rugby player. The main girl, Shannon, she was severely bullied at her old school to the point where she was like having panic attacks and throwing up and like was just absolutely miserable every day. And her parents, who are completely broke, took out a loan so that she could transfer to this prestigious high school to get an education away from the people who were bullying her. She accidentally runs into Johnny. He actually kicks her in the head with a ball and he is obsessed. He is down bad for her. Now, she is an incredibly hard home life. Her father is very abusive. She has many siblings. One of her siblings had already walked out on them because he couldn't take it anymore. And the rest of them are fighting for survival still in the house. And one of them is even 3 years old. So like it's not like they're getting out soon. The second oldest brother is still in the house. His name is Joey. Joey, the man you are. And he's basically trying to hold this family together. This book I think was incredibly sweet because they really did a slow burn romance. I feel like they really took their time getting to know each other, befriending each other, working their way into each other's lives, taking care of each other. They really, really did that in a way that was so sweet, and I think that's why I like this book so much. I think this book was just so unexpected for me. I think I just envisioned like a college romance because of Tom in college, but it was so sweet and it's set in Ireland, so there's a lot of lingo in here, and probably the best thing that Chloe Walsh did, name pronunciations and a glossary so that you know exactly what everything means. There was a lot of times where like I had no idea what was going on. Honestly, petition for all fantasy users to do that too. Like I'm reading Throne of Glass right now and oh my god, what I wouldn't kill to give for this. Do you know how many people were making fun of me on TikTok for saying saying Selena instead of Selena. Like, damn guys, how was I supposed to know? There isn't a pronunciation guide. Thank you, Chloe Walsh, for being this considerate. That's amazing. The next book that I read was Keeping 13, which is the second book to Binding 13. Binding 13 ended in a cliffhanger, and I could not get it out of my head. I couldn't even order the physical copy because I wanted to read it so quickly. And it's about Shannon and Johnny trying to deal with both of their issues. So how are we going to resolve the abusive home issue, and how are we going to resolve the grievous injury that happened that Johnny's trying to hide? I feel like it's about them trying to close those situations up while also realizing that they want to be in a relationship with each other. So in this book, they decide, yes, we are in a relationship, and we don't care what problems are in the way. Personally, I felt this book was not as good as book one. I did give it 4.25 stars. I felt like this book was also just a bit too thirsty. There was a huge chunk of it that was just about how they were going to develop their physical relationship, and it was just so different from what was in book one. You know I love my smut. You know I love it. However, just because book one set such a precedent, I didn't think that was going to be such a big part of book two. So I ended up giving that 4.25 stars. If you guys haven't read that series, I definitely recommend it. And I actually just ordered Joey's Story, which is the next two books. The next book I read was Infamous by Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine. This is the first in the Park Avenue Princes series, the son of the dean. He's just a very straight and narrow guy. He likes poetry, he's very studious, he's very like rule follower, and his mom's pretty strict as the dean. However, the dean, unknowing to JT, had pissed off a group of very rich, privileged guys. They're called the Park Avenue Princes, and they make a bet that Wes couldn't seduce the dean's son, who is up until that point very notoriously straight. And so they make a bet that he gets a free vacation if he can close a deal with JT. Immediately he starts following him around campus, starts to befriend him, and starts working on the bet. Personally, I don't have a thing against bet romances. I actually like them. I felt like though, if you are going to do that, if you are going to set a romance where it's about a bet, you better make the emotional connection, the intimacy between the two characters so palpable that you make up for the fact that one of the main characters was so despicable enough to create a bet in order to sleep with the other main character, okay? Because there has to be a lot of legwork, a lot, to have made up for that fact, because that is heinous. This book I felt like was fun vibes. I felt it was lighthearted. There was some cute moments between Wes and JT, but I just don't think that the emotional connection would have been enough to overrule what Wes had done in the first place. They kind of got into a relationship pretty quickly, and he treated him very well in the relationship, but I don't feel like they had anything more than a friends with benefits vibe going on. So I gave that book 3.5 stars. The last book of August is a big one, and I'm so excited that I finally convinced my book club to read this series. I am finally reading the Throne of Glass series. This might be controversial, okay? I get it. However, I started with The Assassin's Blade, which is the prequel. Now, if you aren't aware of the controversy, The Assassin's Blade is the prequel to Throne of Glass, which is the first book in the Throne of Glass series. However, it was released third. So, people debate. Do we read it first? Do we read it third? My book club and I decided to read it first. Best decision we made. Let me repeat it. Best decision we made was to read this first, because it gave me so much needed context for Throne of Glass and for even Crown of Midnight. If I went through first two books without knowing this, I would have rated them a lot lower. Made me root for Celaena Sardothien so much. All about Celaena and how she was raised to be a trained assassin. She is Arobynn Hamel's trained assassin. She's 16 years old, nobody knows her identity, and she's so scary that she doesn't want anybody to know that she's 16 so that they will not inherently dismiss her because she has such a reputation about her. She's raised in this guild of assassins, and she's sent on missions to go and do Arobynn's bidding. He's kind of grooming her, not gonna lie. It's a sinister relationship. It's not a great relationship. But she draws the line when she gets to a mission where she realizes that Arobynn wants her to aid in slavery. As a repercussion for that, she is then sent on following missions and punishments for her dissent against him. These are a compilation of several missions that she is sent on behalf of Arobynn. And this kicks off the Great Throne of Glass series. I'm now on Crown of Midnight. And if you want my play-by-play reactions of Throne of Glass, I've posted a lot of that on TikTok or on YouTube Shorts, so go ahead and check those out. But I'm doing a whole video on my reactions to the entire Throne of Glass series. Celaena Sardothien is such a kick-ass character, truly, and this book proved it. This book I gave 4.5 stars, which is an awesome rating for a prequel. I don't really love novellas that much. I think they're just fluff mostly, but for a prequel, this was stinking good. These are all the books that I read in August. I'm so happy that I had such a good reading month. If you guys have any specific recommendations for me to read in the upcoming months, please let me know in the comments below. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Look at her style from the street. Look at her style from the ghetto. This I will never make it big. Me, I tell them say I will